The silence before thunder. The Galactic Council chamber stretched wider than most cities, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from every major civilization filled the amphitheater, their forms as diverse as the worlds they called home. At the center of it all stood Supreme Chancellor Korthax of the Vorthak Empire, his forearms spread wide as he addressed the assembly. His species had ruled the known galaxy for 3 millennia, and their word was law among the stars. The primitive world called Earth has been observed for 50 cycles, Korthax announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. They possess basic nuclear technology, primitive spacecraft that barely reach their own moon, and a population divided by meaningless borders. The time has come to bring them into the fold of our empire. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species clicked their mandibles in approval, others hummed their agreement through bioluminescent patches. Earth was just another backward world, to be absorbed, another source of resources and labor for the vast galactic machine. Admiral Zektar stepped forward, his scaled hide gleaming under the chamber's lights. He commanded the most feared fleet in the galaxy, ships that had never known defeat. Give me one battle group, Supreme Chancellor. These humans will learn their place within a single rotation of their sun. But in the shadows of the great chamber, a figure remained perfectly still. Ambassador Chen Wei represented Earth, though few bothered to notice her presence. Humans had only recently achieved faster-than-light communication, barely qualifying for observer status in the Council. She had listened to their discussions, their casual dismissal of her world, and she had remained silent. Until now. "You speak of conquest," Chen Wei said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. The chamber fell quiet, hundreds of alien eyes turning toward the small human figure. "You speak of teaching us our place, but I wonder, have you considered that Earth might teach you something instead?" Laughter rippled through the assembly. The Vorthak delegation actually doubled over with mirth, their respiratory sacs inflating with amusement. Chancellor Korthax regarded the human with what passed for a smile among his kind. And what could a species that has barely left its cradle teach those who have walked among stars for millennia? Chen Wei stood straighter, her dark eyes reflecting, something the aliens couldn't quite identify. "Survival," she said simply. "We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars that scorched continents, and our own worst nature. We have been broken 1,000 times and rebuilt ourselves 1,001. You see weakness where you should see endurance. You see primitiveness where you should see adaptability." Admiral Zektar dismissed her words with a wave of his primary tentacle. "Pretty words from a species that still burns fossil fuels. Your armies use projectile weapons. Your ships move like stones through space. What could you possibly do against the might of the Vorthak Empire?" Chen Wei smiled then, and several species near her involuntarily stepped back. There was something unsettling about that expression, something that triggered ancient instincts in beings who had thought themselves beyond such primitive responses. "We could surprise you," she said softly, "but you won't listen. You've already decided what we are. So come to Earth, Admiral. Bring your fleet. Test your assumptions." The warning hung in the air like smoke after fire. But the Council had made its decision long before this meeting. Earth would be absorbed, its resources catalogued, its people assigned their roles in the greater galactic order. It was the way of things. It had always been the way of things. 3 days later, Admiral Zektar's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 vessels of war, each one capable of devastating a planet's surface, arranged in perfect formation. They expected terror. They expected immediate surrender. They expected Earth's primitive satellites to detect them and flood the communication channels with panicked messages. Instead, they found silence. "No response from the planet," reported Zektar's sensor officer, confusion evident in the harmonics of his voice. "Their satellites are functioning, but they're not reacting to our presence." The Admiral frowned, an expression that involved all 6 of his eyes narrowing simultaneously. "Perhaps their technology is even more primitive than we thought. Move the fleet closer. Let them see us with their optical telescopes if necessary." The fleet advanced through the solar system, passing the outer planets without incident. Jupiter's great storm swirled indifferently as they passed. Mars hung red and dusty in the void. Still, Earth remained silent. No messages, no attempts at communication, no signs of panic. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath. "Admiral," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving a single transmission from Earth. Audio only." Zektar gestured for it to be played. A calm human voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfectly translated galactic standard. "Vorthak Fleet, you are currently 2.7 astronomical units from Earth. You have been in our solar system for 14 minutes and 37 seconds. Your shield frequencies oscillate between 1.4 and 1.6 terahertz. Your primary weapons are charged to 60% capacity." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at their instruments in shock. The measurements were precise, impossibly precise for a species that supposedly lacked advanced sensor technology. The voice continued, still maddeningly calm. "We are transmitting this message to inform you that Earth declines your offer of absorption into the Vorthak Empire. Please reverse course and exit our solar system. This is our only warning." Admiral Zektar's scales flushed purple with rage. "Only warning? They dare threaten us? All ships advance to Earth orbit. Prepare for planetary subjugation protocols." But as the fleet moved deeper into the solar system, strange things began to happen. Sensor readings became unreliable, showing phantom contacts that appeared and vanished like ghosts. Navigation systems reported conflicting positions. Some ships swore they were still near Mars while their windows showed Earth looming large. "Admiral," the science officer's voice trembled, "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the system. They're not random. They form a pattern almost like—" He paused, his training warring with what his instruments were telling him. "Almost like a net, sir. A net around the entire solar system." Zektar stood from his command throne, his full height imposing even among his own crew. "Impossible. No species could generate such a field. It would require the energy output of a star." That's when they saw it. On the main viewer, Earth's moon began to change. What they had taken for crater shadows shifted, revealing massive structures built into the lunar surface. Weapons platforms, each one the size of a city, their barrels trained on the Vorthak fleet. But that wasn't what made Admiral Zektar's heart stop beating in perfect synchronization. It was the realization that these structures were old, ancient. They had been there all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting. The human voice returned, and this time it carried something that made even the bravest Vorthak warrior feel a chill down their spine. "You thought us primitive because we showed you what you expected to see. You thought us weak because we chose not to demonstrate our strength. You thought us ignorant because we preferred to listen rather than speak." A pause, then words that would echo through the galaxy for generations. The galaxy tested Earth today. Now Earth will test the galaxy. And fear, Supreme Admiral, fear will be your only answer. When giants fall. The revelation hung in space like a funeral shroud over the Vorthak fleet. Admiral Zektar stood frozen at his command station, his 6 eyes fixed on the impossible sight before him. The moon, Earth's lone natural satellite that every galactic survey had dismissed as a barren rock, was alive with technology that defied comprehension. Weapon platforms emerged from hidden chambers, their surfaces reflecting no light, as if they existed in a pocket of space separate from reality itself. "Sir," his tactical officer's voice cracked, "I'm reading energy signatures from everywhere. The asteroid belt, the moons of Jupiter, even the rings of Saturn. They're all artificial constructs." The implications crashed over the bridge crew, like a tsunami of dread. If Earth had hidden this level of technology throughout their entire solar system, what else had they concealed? How long had they been watching the galaxy while pretending to be primitive? On Earth's surface, in a bunker that existed in no official record, General Harrison Mitchell stood before a holographic display showing the Vorthak fleet. Around him, representatives from every nation watched in grim satisfaction as their centuries-long deception finally bore fruit. "Phase 1 complete," Mitchell announced. They've seen the outer defenses. Now we show them why Earth doesn't bow. The transformation began slowly, almost gently. Earth's atmosphere, which had appeared normal to every scan, began to shimmer. The shimmer revealed a lattice of energy that encompassed the entire planet, a shield so advanced that it had been invisible to detection. But it wasn't just a shield, it was a statement. The technology required to hide something of this magnitude, while maintaining the illusion of a primitive world, was beyond anything the Vorthak Empire possessed. Admiral Zektar's mind raced through the implications. How, he whispered, the word barely audible. His science officer was running calculations, his 4 hands flying over his console. Admiral, based on these readings, this technology it's at least 10,000 years old, maybe older, but that's impossible. Human civilization is only what they wanted us to believe, Zektar finished, the truth hitting him like a physical blow. Back on Earth, Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the United Nations Assembly Hall, but this was not the divided, bickering organization the galaxy thought it knew. Representatives from every nation stood united, their faces showing the same determined expression. She activated a communication link that reached not just the Vorthak fleet, but every major civilization in the known galaxy. Fellow beings of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying across light years. You believed Earth was young, naive, ripe for conquest. You saw our public face, our carefully crafted image of a species just beginning to reach for the stars. But humanity is not young. We are the ancients you've been searching for. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Chancellor Korthax, watching from his throne world, felt his certainty crumble. The humans continued their revelation, each word measured and deliberate. 65 million years ago, when your ancestors were still developing basic consciousness, humanity's predecessors walked among the stars. We built empires that spanned galaxies. We created technologies that could reshape reality itself, and then we learned the most important lesson any species can learn. Power without wisdom is the path to extinction. The Vorthak fleet hung motionless in space, their weapons powered but useless. They had come to conquer a primitive world and found themselves facing something far older and more dangerous than their worst nightmares. Admiral Zektar's second-in-command spoke up, his voice barely concealing panic. Sir, should we open fire? Test their defenses? But before Zektar could respond, something extraordinary happened. Every ship in his fleet experienced the same phenomenon simultaneously. Their weapon systems didn't shut down. They simply forgot how to work. The knowledge of how to operate them vanished from every mind, every computer, every manual. On Earth, General Mitchell smiled grimly. Quantum information manipulation. We can selectively edit what exists and what doesn't in a localized space. Your weapons aren't broken, Admiral. They've been temporarily erased from the concept of functionality. The demonstration of power was so far beyond anything the Vorthak had imagined that several crew members simply sat down, their minds unable to process what they were experiencing. But Earth wasn't finished with its revelations. The planet itself began to change. Cities that had appeared as sprawling primitive settlements revealed themselves to be carefully designed facades. Beneath them, gleaming structures of impossible architecture rose from hidden depths. Towers that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, simultaneously, bridges of pure energy spanning continents, and at the poles, massive gates that hummed with the power to tear holes in space-time itself. We chose to hide, Chen Wei continued, her voice reaching every corner of the galaxy. Not from fear, but from wisdom. We had walked the path of conquerors before, in ages your histories don't record. We had been the empire that others feared, and we learned that such power corrupts absolutely. So we chose a different path. We rebuilt ourselves not as conquerors but as guardians. We hid our strength and watched, waiting to see if the younger races would learn the lessons we learned through bitter experience. The psychological impact on the Vorthak fleet was devastating. Warriors who had never known defeat found themselves facing a power that could unmake them with a thought. Several ships requested permission to retreat, their crews on the verge of panic. But Admiral Zektar, to his credit, maintained his composure. What do you want? He transmitted to Earth, the question carrying the weight of his empire's sudden vulnerability. The response came not from Chen Wei but from a child. A young girl, no more than 10 years old, appeared on every screen in the fleet. She smiled with the innocence that only the truly powerful can afford. "We want you to grow," she said simply. "We want you to learn what we learned. That strength isn't measured in the worlds you conquer, but in the peace you maintain. That wisdom isn't about knowing everything, but understanding that there's always more to learn." The child's image faded, replaced by a view of Earth from space. But now the planet looked different. It pulsed with life, with energy, with possibilities that the Vorthak had never imagined. "We offer the galaxy a choice," Chen Wei's voice returned. "Continue on your path of conquest and face the full might of Earth's true capabilities, or accept us as equals, as teachers, as friends. We have technologies that could advance your civilizations by millennia, medical knowledge that could end suffering, energy sources that could power entire galaxies. All we ask in return is that you abandon the path of empire and embrace cooperation." Admiral Zektar found himself facing a decision that would reshape the galaxy. His fleet, the pride of the Vorthak Empire, was helpless. But more than that, he was being offered something his species had never considered. Not surrender, not absorption, but partnership. "I need to consult with my government," he transmitted, his voice carrying none of its earlier arrogance. "Of course," came the reply. "But know this, Admiral. Earth has been patient for millennia. We can wait a little longer. But the galaxy has been tested today, and it has been found wanting. The question now is whether you can evolve beyond what you are to become what you could be." As the Vorthak fleet slowly withdrew from Earth's solar system, their weapons systems mysteriously returning to functionality once they passed Jupiter's orbit, every civilization in the galaxy watched and wondered. Earth, the primitive world they had dismissed, had just revealed itself as the sleeping giant of the cosmos. In the Galactic Council chamber, chaos reigned. Some species called for immediate alliance with Earth. Others demanded to know how humanity had hidden such power. But Chancellor Korthak sat in silence, studying the recordings of the encounter. The humans hadn't destroyed the Vorthak fleet. They could have easily, but they chose restraint. They chose to teach rather than punish. It was a mercy that the Vorthak Empire had never shown to others. Back on Earth, the facades were already returning. The cities once again appeared primitive. The moon returned to its cratered disguise, and the solar system settled back into its seemingly natural state. But now the galaxy knew the truth. Earth was not weak. Earth was not young. Earth was ancient, powerful, and patient. And perhaps most terrifying of all, Earth was kind. They had shown mercy where none would have been given. They had offered partnership where others would have demanded servitude. The galaxy had tested, Earth expecting to find prey. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than a predator. They had awakened a teacher, one with the power to reshape the very foundation of galactic civilization. And as species across the cosmos began to reconsider their assumptions about power, conquest, and what it truly meant to be advanced, one truth echoed through every mind. When Earth finally revealed itself, fear had indeed been the only answer. But it was not Earth that had learned to fear. It was the galaxy itself, faced with the mirror of its own primitive nature, that finally understood what it meant to be afraid.